The MASH equivalent is our monthly staff meeting. The Pentagon says it's necessary, but the kind of meetings we have could prolong the war by at least 2 years.
It's not often that a television show becomes part of people's lives the way MASH did. For 11 years, millions of viewers tuned in not just to laugh, but to cry, to mourn, and to feel the raw humanity of a story set in the middle of a war. The camp of the 4077th became a second home for audiences, and the characters inside it felt like family. But what most people didn't see was the turbulence behind the cameras. Some of the show's most beloved stars walked away in ways that left fans stunned, sometimes with shocking on-screen deaths, sometimes without a single goodbye, and sometimes because of pressures and regrets that only came to light years later. The reasons were rarely simple. For some it was ambition, for others it was burnout, and for a few, the decision carried personal costs that went far beyond the set. Today, we're diving into the real stories behind those departures, the career risks, the heartbreak, and the lasting legacy that made MASH unlike any other series in television history. McLean Stevenson's sudden exit. When MASH premiered in 1972, McLean Stevenson quickly became one of the camp's most beloved faces. As Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake, he brought a warmth and bumbling charm that balanced the sharper wit of Hawkeye Pierce and Trapper John. Fans loved him because he felt real, a little overwhelmed, a little unpolished, but always trying to do the right thing in the middle of chaos. By the mid-1970s, Stevenson wasn't just a sitcom actor. He had a Golden Globe in hand and the kind of recognition that could anchor an entire career. But behind the laughs, Stevenson was restless. He had entered MASH with dreams of being the leading man, the center of the story. As the seasons rolled on, the spotlight shifted more and more toward Alan Alda's Hawkeye, who wasn't just stealing scenes, but also shaping scripts and storylines. Stevenson began to feel like a supporting act in a show he thought he could carry. In one interview, he didn't sugarcoat his frustration, saying bluntly, "I want to be number one. I want to be the guy carrying the show." So at the end of season 3, he told producers he was leaving. That decision set up one of the most shocking television moments of the decade. Instead of giving Henry Blake a gentle farewell, maybe reassigned stateside or reunited with his family, the writers decided to remind viewers that war rarely gives happy endings. In the episode Abyssinia, Henry Blake receives his discharge and boards a plane home. It seems like a touching goodbye, until Radar walks into the operating room and delivers the news. Henry's plane has been shot down. There were no survivors. Audiences were stunned. Thousands of letters flooded CBS, some praising the boldness, others furious that a comedy would end a beloved character's story with such cruelty. It was television history in the making, and for Stevenson, it meant freedom, but also risk. He signed a lucrative NBC deal and headlined The McLean Stevenson Show and later Hello, Larry. Both fizzled quickly. Years later, he admitted he'd made a mistake, not by leaving MASH, but by assuming audiences loved him as much as they loved Henry Blake. He would never again find a role that resonated the same way. When McLean Stevenson passed away in 1996, Alan Alda remembered him as a wonderful actor and a good man. But for millions of fans, his shocking exit from MASH remained one of the most unforgettable goodbyes in television history. Wayne Rogers walks away. If McLean Stevenson's farewell was shocking, Wayne Rogers' departure was baffling. From the very start, Rogers played Captain Trapper John McIntyre, the fast-talking, sharp-witted surgeon whose chemistry with Alan Alda's Hawkeye defined the show's early years. Their back-and-forth gave MASH its trademark rhythm: mischievous pranks in camp, razor-sharp banter in the OR, and a friendship that felt authentic in the middle of chaos. But while viewers saw two equal partners, Rogers felt something very different behind the scenes. He had joined MASH believing it would be an ensemble show where each character had their moment. Instead, as the series grew, the spotlight tilted more and more toward Hawkeye. Alda wasn't just the face of the series. He was increasingly shaping scripts and directing episodes, giving Hawkeye layers of emotional growth that Trapper never received. Rogers later admitted that Trapper had become the guy who nodded at everything Alan said, and that was not what he signed up for. By the end of season 3, Rogers had had enough. But unlike Stevenson, his exit wasn't negotiated with contracts and deals, because he'd never actually signed his. Unhappy with a morals clause in the paperwork, Rogers had continued working without locking himself in legally. So when he decided to leave, the studio had no leverage. He simply walked away. In Trapper's place came Mike Farrell as BJ Honeycutt, a more grounded, introspective counterpart to Hawkeye. The tone of the show shifted immediately, and while Farrell eventually won over audiences, many never forgot the emptiness left by Rogers' sudden disappearance. Rogers, however, didn't vanish. He went on to star in House Calls, appear in TV movies, and later reinvented himself completely as a financial investor, even becoming a regular commentator on Fox News. He was proud of the life he built outside Hollywood, but for MASH fans, his quiet walkout remained one of the show's most painful missing pieces. Alan Alda would later reflect, "Wayne is one of the smartest people I've ever worked with. I missed him a lot when he left." And when Rogers passed away in 2015, Alda added bittersweetly, "We made a pact to give each other a hard time for the rest of our lives, and I'm sorry we won't have the chance." Larry Linville leaves Frank Burns behind. From the moment he arrived on screen, Larry Linville's Major Frank Burns was the man audiences loved to hate. He was uptight, self-important, and hopelessly incompetent in the operating room. The kind of character who clung to military regulations while secretly carrying on an affair with Major Margaret "Hot Lips" Houlihan. His petty feuds with Hawkeye and Trapper, combined with his inability to take a joke, made him the perfect comic foil in MASH's earliest, more slapstick-driven years. But as the series evolved, Frank Burns started to feel like a relic. The writing for MASH grew deeper and more complex, exploring the psychological toll of war and giving characters like Margaret, Hawkeye, and even Klinger more human layers. Meanwhile, Frank remained stuck in the same one-note routine, the blundering villain to everyone else's growth. Larry Linville saw the problem himself. By the end of Season 5, he felt he'd taken Frank as far as the character could go. Producers wanted him to stay and even offered a 2-year contract extension, but Linville turned it down. He wasn't bitter. He simply didn't want to spend more years trapped in a role that left him no room to evolve. His departure came quickly and almost quietly. In the Season 6 premiere, Frank Burns spirals after a drunken night in Seoul and is shipped stateside for psychiatric evaluation. In his place, the show introduced Major Charles Emerson Winchester III, played by David Ogden Stiers, a cultured, arrogant surgeon who gave MASH's conflicts a more sophisticated edge. The difference was immediate. Without Burns' cartoonish blunders, the show moved further away from broad comedy and into irony and emotional storytelling. Fans who had enjoyed watching Hawkeye and Trapper outwit Ferret Face missed his absurd antics, but the change also signaled MASH's maturity. After leaving, Linville continued working steadily in television with appearances in Murder, She Wrote, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, and more. But no matter what roles he played, he remained Frank Burns in the minds of audiences. When he passed away in 2000 at age 60, tributes poured in from fans who admitted that, love him or hate him, Frank had left a lasting impression. For many, his absence marked the moment the 4077th truly changed, when the camp moved on from lighthearted mischief and embraced the heavier, more human side of war. Gary Berghoff says goodbye to Radar. Gary Berghoff was the heart of the 4077th, the glue that held the camp together in ways no one else could. As Corporal Walter Radar O'Reilly, he brought innocence, sweetness, and a kind of quiet wisdom that made him impossible not to love. He wasn't just comic relief. He was the character who knew what Colonel Blake or later Colonel Potter needed before they even spoke. The boyish charm, the keen ears for helicopters approaching, and the silent empathy made Radar the soul of MASH. But by the late 1970s, the long production hours and relentless pace of filming began to take their toll. Berghoff struggled quietly with anxiety and depression, battles rarely spoken about publicly at the time. On top of that, he was missing his family. Married with a young daughter, he deeply regretted being away from her formative years. Contract disputes over pay, screen time, and flexibility added stress, and by Season 8, he had reached his breaking point. Unlike some of his co-stars, Berghoff didn't just walk away abruptly. His departure was crafted into one of the most poignant farewells in television history. In the 2-part episode Goodbye, Radar, tragedy, and duty collide. When his uncle dies, leaving his mother alone on the family farm, Colonel Potter grants Radar a hardship discharge. Berghoff originally wanted a dramatic exit, with visible tears, but the director encouraged subtlety. The result was quietly devastating. Radar slips away before his farewell party, leaving his teddy bear behind on Hawkeye's bunk, and the camp moves on to face more wounded. The war and life didn't pause for goodbyes, and that made the moment hit harder than any melodrama ever could. After leaving MASH, Berghoff stepped back from acting almost entirely. He briefly returned for the spin-off after MASH and a failed pilot called Walter, but his focus shifted to painting, wildlife conservation, and even inventing, holding several patents. For Berghoff, leaving wasn't just about ending a role, it was about reclaiming his life. He later explained, "I left for two reasons, my family and burnout. I wanted to pick up the pieces of my life." For fans, Radar's farewell marked more than just the departure of a beloved character. It was the moment the innocence of the 4077th truly slipped away, leaving the camp and its stories forever changed. George Morgan's forgotten exit. Not every departure from MASH was dramatic or tearful. Some were almost invisible, like George Morgan's. In the 1972 pilot episode, he played Father John Mulcahy, the unit's Catholic chaplain. But unlike later portrayals, Morgan's version barely spoke a word. He appeared mostly in reaction shots, silently observing the chaos of the 4077th from the sidelines. Morgan wasn't a newcomer to acting. He had credits in shows like Bonanza and films such as Putney Swope. Yet, his take on Mulcahy never had a chance to develop. After the pilot, producer Larry Gelbart decided to recast the role. Morgan was a perfectly fine actor, Gelbart explained, but the show needed someone with a quirkier personality, someone who could bring warmth, humor, and moral grounding without having to be written in constantly. That someone was William Christopher, who went on to define the character for all 11 seasons. For Morgan, however, the exit was final. He only earned 2 more screen credits afterward, the last appearing in 1990. Yet his face lingered in MASH's opening credits for every episode that followed, an almost ghostly reminder of the pilot that could have been. Morgan's quiet replacement highlighted just how quickly opportunities could vanish in Hollywood. In a series where departures often made headlines, sometimes the stories behind the scenes went unnoticed. His brief presence became a footnote in MASH history, forgotten by many, but a subtle reminder that timing and circumstance can define a career as much as talent. Life after MASH and legacy. Leaving MASH was never a simple career move. For some actors, it was a leap toward creative freedom. For others, it was a necessary step to escape personal strain. But the reality after the cameras stopped rolling was often harsher than expected. McLean Stevenson left to star in his own sitcoms, The McLean Stevenson Show and later Hello, Larry, only to see both fail after short runs. Looking back in 1983, he admitted the real mistake wasn't leaving MASH. It was believing audiences loved him as much as they loved Henry Blake. His later work never matched the cultural impact of his time at the 4077th, and his career became a cautionary tale about walking away from a role that fit perfectly. Wayne Rogers avoided legal battles by never signing a contract, but he found himself permanently disconnected from the MASH brand. The spin-off Trapper John, MD recast his role, and Rogers moved on to house calls and a successful second career as a financial investor. He remained proud of his decision to leave, yet fans never forgot the sudden disappearance of their beloved Trapper. Larry Linville's choice to step away from Frank Burns gave the show creative room to grow. Without Burns' cartoonish antics, MASH shifted from slapstick humor to more character-driven, emotionally complex storytelling. Linville continued acting steadily, but never again played a role as widely recognized, leaving audiences forever remembering him as Ferret Face. Gary Berghoff left on his own terms, citing burnout and the desire to be with his family. His farewell as Radar was among the most touching in television history, a quiet moment that captured both the end of innocence in the 4077th and the emotional weight of war. After MASH, he pursued painting, conservation, and invention, largely stepping away from Hollywood to reclaim his life. Even George Morgan, whose exit came before the show truly began, reminded everyone that timing and circumstance can shape a career as much as talent. His brief presence in the pilot, now nearly forgotten, serves as a ghostly footprint in the series' history, proof that not every story gets to be told. These departures collectively transformed MASH. Each exit reshaped the camp, altering tone, humor, and the emotional heartbeat of the series. The final episode, Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, drew over 106 million viewers in 1983, cementing the show's legendary status. Yet for many fans, the real shifts happened years earlier, with each familiar face leaving a gap that no script could fully fill. In the end, the choices were deeply human, guided by ambition, fatigue, frustration, or personal need. The actors didn't just leave chairs empty in the swamp. They left pieces of themselves behind, forever etched in the hearts of millions who had welcomed them into their homes. Which departure hit you the hardest? Was it Henry Blake's shocking farewell, Trapper John's sudden disappearance, or Radar's quiet exit? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the 4077th, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell so you never miss another story from television's golden age. Call to action. The story of the 4077th is more than just a tale of laughter and surgery. It's a story of ambition, heartbreak, and the human side of leaving something you love. Each actor's departure changed the course of MASH, shifting the tone, the humor, and the emotional depth of the series. From Henry Blake's shocking farewell to Radar's quietly heartbreaking exit and Trapper John's sudden disappearance, every goodbye left its mark on both the camp and the hearts of millions of fans. But beyond the stories on screen, these exits remind us of the choices and sacrifices behind the scenes, the ambition, the fatigue, and the need to find balance in life. It shows that even in a world of laughter and camaraderie, life doesn't pause for goodbyes. Which of these departures affected you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear which farewell left a lasting impression on you. And if you love this deep dive into the untold stories of the 4077th, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another look behind the scenes of television's golden moments.